If you've been dealing with tingling, burning, or numbness in your feet, your hands, maybe shooting up or down your legs, and you've been told that your labs are fine, or you've tried things that haven't worked, or you've just kind of accepted that this is your life now, this episode is for you. Nerve pain and nerve dysfunction are some of the most frustrating things that I see people come in with because conventional medicine often doesn't have a lot to offer beyond managing symptoms. And even that, the management of the symptoms is wrought with challenges because the single biggest pharmaceutical that is recommended for nerve pain is gabapentin. And lots of people don't tolerate gabapentin well at all. It's on my crap list in terms of pharmaceuticals that I try to recommend people look into before they start on it. Let's put it that way. Welcome to Vitality Radio, the podcast that helps you make sense of natural supplements and thrive without pharma drugs. I'm Jared St. Clair. I grew up in a health food store and spent over 40 years now figuring out what works and what doesn't, so that you can make confident, informed decisions about nutrition, supplements, and your health. Welcome back to Vitality Radio. I'm Jared, and today we're doing something a little different. I'm excited to introduce you a new formula that I've been working on for the last year or so. This one is needed big time. Now, there are some great products on the market specific to this issue that a lot of people are dealing with now, way more people than ever before, and that's nerve pain, numbness, tingling, neuropathy, this type of thing. If you've been dealing with tingling, burning, or numbness in your feet, your hands, maybe shooting up or down your legs, and you've been told that your labs are fine, or you've tried things that haven't worked, or you've just kind of accepted that this is your life now, this episode is for you. Nerve pain and nerve dysfunction are some of the most frustrating things that I see people come in with because conventional medicine often doesn't have a lot to offer beyond managing symptoms. And even that, the management of the symptoms is wrought with challenges because the single biggest pharmaceutical that is recommended for nerve pain is gabapentin. And lots of people don't tolerate gabapentin well at all. It's on my crap list in terms of pharmaceuticals that I try to recommend people look into before they start on it. Let's put it that way. But the nutritional science around nerve health is actually pretty solid. We know a lot. There are very specific nutrients at specific doses that have real clinical research behind them. And today, I'm going to walk you through a formula that I just developed specifically to deliver these nutrients at the doses that actually show up in the research because, well, that's how I formulate things. I don't like to pixie dust things, as I call it, or window dress. I've got full doses of things that actually have shown to be effective. And so if you've been suffering and you haven't found answers yet, or maybe you've found some answers, but you need more relief, I want you to stay with me through this episode. Today, I'm introducing a product called NerveVitality, the most comprehensive and potent nerve formula that I currently know how to produce. But I do reserve the right to improve on this formula as more research comes along. And I certainly probably will do that because that's also what I like to do with my formulas, is not stand still for too long. What often the case when I'm looking at these types of formulas, and this is what happened with EndoCleanse, this is what has happened with quite a few of my formulas, is that I find something that I really, really like. This is actually what happened with Hair Revive when I developed Hair Revive for women almost 20 years ago. I found products that work, that we had success with, but that I felt like could be improved upon. And this situation is no different. In fact, a local Utah company produced a product years ago that a customer of mine told me about. And this customer came in with an empty bottle of a product called Nerve Reverse. And I looked at the back of the bottle and it was made right here in Utah, like in the same county that Vitality Nutrition is in, Davis County. And I had never seen the formula before. I liked what was in it. It made sense. And she swore it had made a big difference for her neuropathy. So I thought, okay, we're going to look into this product. I love local companies. I like the ingredients, and I've got at least one testimonial here. Well, we brought it in and we've had great success with it, but there's been a couple of things about it that I haven't loved. One, I felt like it was underpotent in a couple areas, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. And two, there was a formulation error, as I like to call it, and I'll explain what that means here in a minute as well. But let me tell you why I say this formula is needed big time, because this may not be you, but it may be someone that you know. And what I've seen is that in the past, let's say well, 5 or 6 years ago or beyond, nerve pain was largely diabetic neuropathy. And it still is largely diabetic neuropathy. But what's happened in the post COVID world has what I've seen and noticed is a huge explosion in neuropathic pain. Now, I've been doing this for over 40 years, as many people listening know. I've seen trends come and go, and I've watched categories explode and collapse. And I'll tell you that in all of that time, I've never seen a category that's exploded like nerve pain has over the last 4 or 5 years. Part of that is probably just demographics. We have a more aging population, diabetes is at an all-time high. It's a real epidemic in this country. And so peripheral neuropathy has always followed diabetes like a shadow. And that's not new. What is new, though, is COVID. Research out of the Massachusetts General Hospital found that in a group of long haul COVID and COVID vaccinated patients, that were evaluated for neurological symptoms, 59% showed evidence of peripheral nerve damage. 59%. And a separate study found that COVID positive patients face roughly 3 times the risk of developing neuropathy compared to people who did not have a COVID infection. Yale Medicine's Neuro-COVID Clinic has documented two primary patterns, one that comes on fast during acute illness and one small fiber neuropathy that tends to be developed 2 to 12 weeks after the infection clears. And honestly, I'd never heard of small fiber neuropathy until the post-COVID world. Small fiber neuropathy causes burning pain, tingling, numbness, and fatigue. If it sounds familiar, then it may be you that's dealing with this, or maybe someone that you love or care about. A lot of people are out there dealing with this lingering COVID symptom of neuropathy because of actual nerve damage that took its toll based on either the illness or the treatment for the illness. So the need for a really well-designed nerve health formula right now is not just about marketing, it's about demand. It's physiological reality for millions of people. And that's a big part of why I developed NerveVitality. Now, I've been thinking about this formula for a couple of years, but as I'm formulating products, and I always have, and this is not an exaggeration, at least a dozen that I am thinking about. Right now, we have over 20 in the pipeline. We just introduced the GLP-1 formula. NerveVitality, of course, is here now. And we have several more that are just about to be released in the next 3 to 6 months. And so anyway, as I'm developing these formulas, I'm thinking about them. I'm thinking, demand. I'm thinking, what do I have on the store shelves that is a very effective product? And can I really make it significantly better? Because if I can't make it better, I'm not going to waste my time. And then I always think about price too. Can I make a product that's going to be more economical? Because as a supplement user, that these things can add up. So as I was looking at the formulas and what I have for nerve issues, with Nerve Reverse being my favorite so far of anything that I've seen, I just looked to see what could be improved. And this is what I found. I'll tell you a little backstory on this. So we couldn't get Nerve Reverse for a while. It was out of stock, I think, because they probably had the onslaught of demand post COVID. And so I think it was maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks or something like that we couldn't get the product. The manufacturer was out, we were out, all that kind of thing. So we had people coming in that were loving the product that were missing not having it because all of a sudden their nerve pain was worse. And so I'm looking at this and saying, okay, what are the key ingredients in here that are probably delivering the most benefit? And I would give people, unfortunately, 3 or 4 bottles of stuff to give them enough of the things that were in Nerve Reverse. I'd give them benphthiamine. I'd give them alpha lipoic acid being the 1 and 2, the most important ingredients. And then sometimes vitamin D3, depending on if they're already taking that, B12, folate, some of these other ingredients. Anyway, what I would do though is I would tell them to take 600 milligrams of alpha lipoic acid, 600 milligrams of benphthiamine, and Nerve Reverse only had 300 of each at the time. And the reason I was telling them to take more is because they weren't getting the complete formula. So I felt like they needed more punch. But also I'd had quite a few people already who had used Nerve Reverse who had results. It was helping, but it wasn't helping enough. And I found when I increased the dose of those 2 ingredients, they would get better results. So as I talked about with Nerve Reverse, great formula, works well, but I just felt like a little bit too weak in a couple of areas and missing something really important based on what the formula is. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to do better. And as I started looking at doing better, I also thought I can probably drive the price down. And so that's what has happened. We're looking at about a 20% lower price for a more potent product that's more complete, that I know is going to work great because I already know how great Nerve Reverse is. So this was a no-brainer because I know people can get equal results minimum, but I actually believe you're going to get better results with this formula. So what are the three issues with Nerve Reverse that I feel like were improved with Nerve Vitality? Well, the first two are about dosage. And actually, interestingly enough, during my formulation of this product, NerveVerse made a correction. They went from 300 milligrams of alpha lipoic acid to 600 milligrams, which is really the clinical dose that you want. A 2012 meta-analysis confirmed that 600 milligrams of alpha lipoic acid significantly improved neuropathic symptoms compared to a placebo. And 300 milligrams is only half that. It doesn't have nearly the amount of research. So I had already decided I was going to put 600 milligrams in my formula. Now NerveVerse has that, thankfully, and NerveVerse is a better formula because of it. But what they didn't do, and what I wish they'd done, and I don't know why they didn't do it, maybe cost, that's my best guess, is they didn't double the potency of benfotiamine. Now, benfotiamine, I've talked about on this show before. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, but the best research on benfotiamine starts at 300 milligrams, which is in Nerve Reverse, but the best research is at 600 milligrams. And so our Nerve Vitality also has double the benfotiamine at the 600 milligrams. And we know that several trials use specifically 600 milligrams and show that it works very, very well. And benfotiamine is the fat-soluble form of vitamin B1 that is specifically nourishing to the nerves and the neurons, and a really, really powerful product specifically for that, whereas regular B1, frankly, doesn't do much for the nerves in most cases. Now, I talked about a formulation error, and I talk about these a lot on this show, and there are certain things that you've got to get right when you're doing supplements. Now, many of the people that buy Nerve Reverse from me at Vitality are also already taking vitamin D3 and K2. They're either getting it in our multivitamin, the Ultimate Vitality Multi, they're getting it in our Vital D3 K2, or they're getting it from some other source. So maybe not that big of a deal in that case, but the people that are only using Nerve Reverse are missing on something big time. They're getting 5,000 units of D3 with zero K2. We never, ever, 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 ever take D3 without K2. And if you listen to my show, you know this. And so that has frustrated me for a long time, because now I have to try and talk to a customer and explain to them why they need the K2 in addition, even though K2 isn't in and of itself like a critical component of nerve health. It is a critical component of cardiovascular health and tissue health and glandular health when there is D3 in a formula. So I put 120 micrograms of K2 in my formula to make sure that the D3 is not, as I call it, unopposed. We have to have those two. And this is why, just real quick, D3 K2 101, because I know many of you have already heard this, but I think it bears repeating anyway. Vitamin D3 dramatically increases calcium absorption in your gut. That's largely why we take it, because better calcium utilization is great for healthier bones, as long as you have K2 and magnesium, which are so critical. I always tell everybody to take magnesium. You know this already. So, and magnesium is not going to be in this formula because it doesn't need to be. Most people are already taking supplemental magnesium. If you're not, go back and listen to my magnesium episodes and get on it. But let's talk about K2 specifically. It activates a protein called matrix GLA protein, MGP, which is the most potent known inhibitor of vascular calcification. When K2 is adequate, MGP is activated. Calcium gets directed into your bones and teeth, and it stays out of your arteries and soft tissues. When K2 is deficient, MGP sits inactive, and calcium can deposit in places you absolutely do not want it: arterial walls, kidneys, soft tissue, the pineal gland, the parathyroid, and so on. Healthy arterial tissue has been shown to contain roughly 100 times more K2 than calcified arterial tissue. 100 times. In 2015, a study found that people with the highest K2 intake had a 52% lower risk of severe arterial calcification, 52%, and a 57% lower risk of dying from heart disease over a 7 to 10 year follow-up period. That study followed over 5,000 people. That's meaningful data. So when I see a formula that delivers 5,000 units of D3 and no K2, I have a real problem with that. And that made this even more urgent that I need to get this product out on the market. So, like I say, 120 micrograms of K2 from MK7 in the Nerve Vitality so that we're making sure that the D3 is doing its job without doing anything we don't want it to do. Now, let's talk about the other ingredients, ingredient by ingredient, and why they matter. Alpha lipoic acid, one of my favorite ingredients in the entire supplement world. I have a little bit in my Ultimate Vitality Multi because it's such a powerful antioxidant, so great for blood sugar and so many other things. I've got a bunch of it in my GLP-1 formula because it's fantastic there as well. This is one of the most powerful antioxidants there is because it is both water soluble and fat soluble. That means that it can work inside the cell and outside the cell, in fatty tissue and in watery environments inside the body. Most antioxidants can do one or the other, but not both. For peripheral neuropathy specifically, ALA has one of the strongest research records of any supplement. A 2012 meta-analysis that looked over multiple studies confirmed that 600 milligrams per day significantly reduced neuropathic symptoms compared to placebo, like I mentioned. Multiple randomized controlled trials have shown reductions in pain, burning, and tingling, as well as improvements in nerve conduction velocity. That's a measurable electrical signal through the nerve at the dose of 600 milligrams. A 5-week multi-center trial found that 600 milligram dose had the optimal risk to benefit ratio, with higher doses not adding meaningful benefit necessarily. And so 600 really does seem to be the sweet spot, although there is some research indicating that even more can be better. So 600 milligrams is really the spot that I think makes the most sense. And as I said, Nerve Reverse did correct that recently, but we decided to launch this product with the 600 right out of the gate. ALA is also critical for blood sugar balance, glutathione production, and liver health. It's one of the best antioxidants for the liver, and of course, glutathione, being your body's master antioxidant, plays a meaningful supporting role in overall health, in addition to what it's doing for blood sugar and nerve damage. Benfotiamine. This is one of my favorite ingredients as well, and one of the two ingredients, as I mentioned, that I feel the most strongly about in this formula. It's the ingredient where Nerve Vitality has the largest gap over Nerve Reverse, as it has double the amount. Regular thiamine, standard B1, is water soluble. It does not cross cell membranes efficiently. It has very limited ability to get into nerve tissue in meaningful concentrations. Benfotiamine is fat soluble. It is still vitamin B1, but a different form, which means that it passes through a cell membrane easily. It reaches nerve cells in a way that regular B1 simply cannot. And it produces significantly higher intracellular B1 levels. That distinction is the whole ball game when it comes to nerve health. We've got to get it into the cells. A phase 3, 6-week randomized controlled trial demonstrated significant improvement in neuropathy symptom scores at 600 milligrams per day of benfotiamine when compared to placebo. A separate 6-week trial showed improvements in pain, vibration sensation, and nerve conduction parameters. Research published in Neuroscience Research in 2022 documented improved myelin sheath maintenance and enhanced nerve fiber density with benfotiamine use. Benfotiamine protects the myelin sheath. That is the sheath that wraps around the nerve ending and protects the nerve ending itself. That is critical because neuropathy occurs primarily when the myelin sheath has eroded. So we have to make sure we're taking care of the myelin sheath, and benfotiamine specifically does that. If you think about the myelin sheath, think about it as the insulation on an electrical wire. When that breaks down, signals misfire, and you get pain, tingling, and numbness. Nerve Reverse provides just 300 milligrams of benfotiamine. Nerve Vitality provides 600 milligrams, and that is a big, big difference, especially when we look at the research. And I've seen that and experienced that when people are doing good with Nerve Reverse but need more oomph, we add more benfotiamine, we get a better result. Vitamin B12 as methylcobalamin. The Nerve Reverse formula has 2,000 micrograms. Mine has 2,500. Now, that's going to vary from person to person, whether or not that extra 500 micrograms is useful. Some people will find it better. Some will not necessarily notice the difference. Notice, though, that I'm definitely using the methylated form, and that is the neurologically active form of B12. It's the form that your nervous system actually uses. Methylcobalamin has been shown to promote axonal regeneration. That's the regrowth of nerve fibers, and to support myelin synthesis. So again, supporting the myelin sheath. It also suppresses ectopic nerve firing, which is a significant contributor to neuropathic pain. Research has confirmed improvements in nerve conduction, velocity, and reductions in neuropathic pain in patients supplementing with methylcobalamin. We have the 2,500 micrograms in there because we feel like it's the right amount based on what I can tell. It's not going to be the same for everybody. Like I say, I honestly don't know if it'll make a difference in some people, but I do believe that some people will see more benefit. And generally speaking, with nerve pain, there's a higher need for B12. And so throwing the extra 500 micrograms in there to me made sense. It also has methylfolate. Of course, we only use the methylated form, never folic acid. This difference is critically important because folic acid is a synthetic form that requires conversion by an enzyme called MTHFR, and a significant portion of the population, about 40 to 50%, maybe more, has MTHFR as a variant issue in their genetic DNA, and that is a problem. So we're always using the methylfolate. Both formulas, Nerve Reverse and Nerve Vitality, have 2,000 micrograms per dose. And B12 and methylfolate work in tandem. We also have the most important version of vitamin B6 known as P5P, also the cell-ready form. It's the active coenzyme form of B6 and the one that the body knows how to use without converting it. We don't want pyridoxine HCl. That has to be converted in the liver, and that's difficult for a lot of people to do. So we have the right form, and I believe we have it at the absolute best dose because too much B6 can actually create nerve discomfort. Not enough B6 can actually create nerve discomfort. And everything that I can find, 300 milligrams is a safe, it's not going to make things worse, but an effective dose. It should make things better at 30 milligrams per day. Now, I've only put 2,500 units of vitamin D3 in here. This is the one of my formula that's lower in dose. And it's not a money saving thing because vitamin D doesn't add any cost to the product at all. Doubling it would have made no difference at all. But many people in this audience are already using vitamin D3 and K2. Oftentimes, it's the Vital D3 K2 from Vitality Nutrition, the Ultimate Vitality Multi. And I simply didn't want to overdo vitamin D3 for people that are already using it from another source. So we're leaving 2,500 in there with the 120 micrograms of K2. But it's really important to understand that research consistently shows that people with lower vitamin D levels experience significantly worse neuropathy symptoms. And so we've got to have it in there. I just felt like the right dose for most people is going to be 2,500 because so many people are already taking vitamin D3. And again, we've put the vitamin K2 in there. And I'll tell you why it's not in Nerve Reverse. And I hate this, but it's just, I'm sure it's the truth. Most people don't know that you need K2 with D3. You're probably ahead of the curve that way because I think most people listening to this show are, but most people don't. And they know vitamin D3 is good, so they see it in there. Maybe they've read that D3 is great for nerve pain. And so that's important, right? But vitamin K2 from MK7 costs 50 times more than D3. So many manufacturers simply won't add it because the consumer's not demanding it. And unfortunately, that is a major oversight. It would drive the price of the product up. And most manufacturers simply aren't going to do that. But there is research actually that besides what it does for calcium direction, which we already talked about, there's a study from Rome published in 2023 that found that MK7, that specific form of K2, was associated with the downregulation of genes involved in neurodegeneration and neuroinflammation, including genes tied to the amyloid pathway. A double-blind, randomized controlled trial found that adults supplementing with vitamin K2 daily showed improved neuromuscular signaling compared to placebo, particularly in older adults. Now, when I first started formulating this product, I didn't know about that research. I just simply wanted to make the D3 more safe. And I thought, I'm going to put an expensive ingredient in here. It's going to drive the cost of the product up, but it's the right thing to do for the formula. And that's what I always try to accomplish. And so then I'm starting to read and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome because not only is this better for you and safer, but there's actually additional benefit associated with it, which is amazing because MK7 specifically has also been shown to downregulate inflammatory cytokines, TNF alpha and IL-1 beta in a dose-dependent manner, meaning the more you take, the better the result. And I chose 120 micrograms for two reasons. It's enough in all the research I've done to counter the D3 that's in the formula for sure. Probably actually even a little bit more than you need for that. But I didn't want to drive the price of the product up any more than I needed to by adding it in there. And again, you are likely already taking my Ultimate Vitality multivitamin or my Vital D3 K2, or maybe even both. And it didn't make sense to overdo K2. So whenever we're doing these formulas, I'm trying to make it work for the masses as much as possible. But check this out. Those inflammatory signaling molecules are elevated during neuropathic conditions. And this includes post-COVID neuropathy. So the K2 in this formula, along with whatever other K2 you're getting, if you're using the multi or you're using the D3 K2, the higher dose of K2 with that combination delivers even a higher reduction in these inflammatory signalers. So that's why I chose the dose where it is. I think because you get 180 in the multi, you get 180 in the Vital D3 K2 lower potency, or 360 K2 in the high potency Vital D3 K2. So regardless, adding the 120 in is not going to be too much. The research is very, very certain on that. You won't overdose on K2 unless you try. In fact, they can't find an overdose no matter how hard you try, but you're certainly not going to overdose at this dose. And so that's the formula. That's how it's developed, why it's developed. And it's as confident as I could possibly be in a new formula, because I've already had great success with what I once considered to be the best formula on the market. And now I consider a little bit inferior for those reasons that I've already presented. And then how about price? Well, here's the deal with Vitality. And I want to make sure this is clear, because there's a lot of things that can drive the price up of a product. The ingredients are the most important thing. That's the baseline of, why any product costs what it costs. It's why, some herbs cost more than other herbs, and some vitamins cost more than other vitamins. It's just the raw material cost itself. But the biggest thing is marketing. And right now, maybe this will change. I don't know. We haven't done it yet. We'll see if we decide to do more marketing than what we do right now here at Vitality Nutrition. But right now, my marketing engine is this podcast. I do free stuff on Facebook and Instagram, and I talk to people that come into my stores now, and we have our website. But we've never spent a dime up to this point on Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, none of that stuff. I put out this show twice a week. It's how I market these products. And then I get my face and my voice on other people's podcasts. In fact, you may have already seen this, but I was just on Carlin Call from Just Ingredients, her podcast, just a few weeks ago. And I get my word out that way. That's doesn't cost anything. It's just a time thing. And therefore, because I don't have that, and I don't have a sales team out in the marketplace selling to stores and things like that, I don't pay for influencers, and I don't have any kind of distribution other than me. It all comes directly from my stores or my website. I'm able to cut costs dramatically on the marketing side, and therefore give you a higher potency, higher quality, higher efficacy product for less money. NerveVerse online almost everywhere is $44.99. On our website, it's $42.99 for a 30-day supply. They have a 90-day supply that's $119.99. That sounds crazy, $120, but it's $40 a month. It's not terrible for what is a really, really good and effective product. NerveVitality, however, is $35.99 for a 30-day supply. So that's $7 cheaper for that month's supply. And we're introducing it at 15% off. So you can get it for even significantly less than that. So $7 cheaper for the 30-day supply, $20 cheaper for the 90-day supply. We're at $99.99. So $33 a month for a superior nerve health product. I think it's an incredible value for the product. And we're introducing the large one at 15% off as well. So you're looking at $85 for a 3-month supply. And here's the kicker. If you subscribe at those prices, you'll maintain those prices up until if and when I have to increase the price. But you'll get that deal locked in. That gets you under $30 a month if you're buying that 90-count bottle. And of course, you can cancel your subscription anytime. But as long as you open it and keep it, then you get that discount. So great value, higher potency product with the vitamin K2. That's what we're doing with Nerve Vitality. And I want to mention one more thing, and then I'm going to let you go. If you're also using our GLP-1 metabolic optimizer and you've got the question, what about the alpha lipoic acid in there? Well, there's some interesting research on alpha lipoic acid. Most of the best research is at 600 milligrams. That's why I chose that amount for Nerve Vitality. There's 400 milligrams in the GLP-1 formula. Now, I mentioned in the GLP-1 show that I would have put 600 milligrams or more had I been able to fit it in 3 capsules. I just couldn't make it work. And so I put the max in that I could fit. I'm happy with 400 milligrams because there's good research at 400 milligrams, but I would have been even happier at 600 milligrams. Now, the question is, can you take both of these and have 1,000 milligrams? Well, yes, because as I mentioned earlier, 1,200 milligrams, there's a lot of good research on alpha lipoic acid at 800. There's good research at 1,200. And so between the two, you'd be getting 1,000 milligrams if you're dealing with blood sugar issues, specifically insulin resistance, higher A1C, higher fasting glucose, metabolic syndrome or metabolic disorders, anything along those lines. More alpha lipoic acid is better. If you're dealing with nerve pain and nerve issues and degradation of the myelin sheath, more alpha lipoic acid is better. So GLP-1 metabolic optimizer pairs beautifully with Nerve Vitality. I was formulating them at the same time, and I was always keeping those two things in mind. And so if you have chronically elevated blood sugar, which damages small blood vessels that feed your nerves, and that damage accumulates over time, often quietly, long before you've got a diagnosis, the GLP-1 formula is designed to address that root cause, improving insulin sensitivity, stabilizing blood sugar, supporting the metabolic environment. And Nerve Vitality works on what's already happened, giving your nervous system the nutrients it needs to protect, maintain, and support nerve tissue while the metabolic picture is improving. They're working on the same problem from 2 different angles. And you'll notice, like I said, that they both have the alpha lipoic acid in them, but they are in there at the doses that I think makes sense for the reasons that I've already discussed. So Nerve Vitality is designed to support nerve function, nerve health, and the nutritional environment that healthy nerves depend on. It's not a treatment for any disease. If you've been diagnosed with a medical condition affecting your nerves, please work with a qualified healthcare provider, ideally one who believes like we do, right? Who's willing to look at nutritional approaches and supplemental approaches, functional medicine approaches. That said, the people that I think about most when I think about this formula are people that I've talked to in this store so many times over the last several years, especially since COVID. Anyone dealing with tingling, numbness, or burning sensations in their extremities, anyone with a history of blood sugar imbalances or metabolic issues where nerve vulnerability is higher, anyone who has had COVID and is still experiencing unexplained nerve symptoms weeks or months or years later, anyone who's been taking high-dose vitamin D3 without K2 and wants to correct that, and of course, anybody that's already using Nerve Reverse and wants something even better and safer. All right, that is the show today. I hope that this made sense and locks in with you if you're dealing with this or you know someone who is. Of course, if you have questions, call us 801-292-6662. Walk into one of our stores, South Ogden or Bountiful, or check us out online, vitalitynutrition.com. Until next time, I'm Jared St. Clair, and this has been Vitality Radio. Thanks for listening to the Vitality Radio podcast. If this episode helped you, follow the show, share it with someone, and explore trusted education and resources at vitalitynutrition.com. See you next time.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Vitality Radio. Just a reminder that this podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast has not been evaluated by the FDA. This podcast is provided with the understanding that the information shared is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. This podcast is not a substitute for professional care by a medical professional. Thank you.